The rain came down in angry sheets that night, flooding the cracked sidewalks of a lonely street where broken dreams and unpaid bills lived side by side. Under a flickering streetlight stood Daniel Moore, his jacket soaked through, his breath visible in the cold air as he looked down at the worn-out flyer in his trembling hands. Final notice: eviction in 7 days. His heart felt heavier than the sky above him. He had just lost his 3rd job this month, his daughter's medicine was running low, and his fridge had nothing but a bottle of water and a few pieces of stale bread. Life wasn't just hard anymore. It was cruel. Daniel wiped the rain from his face and whispered, "Just one more day. Please," as if pleading with the universe. He wasn't asking for luxury, only survival. He wanted a chance to keep a roof over his little girl's head. 7-year-old Lily. The reason he still woke up every morning despite everything collapsing around him. He didn't know that his life was about to change forever. Not through a lottery ticket. Not through luck, but through an act of kindness on a night when no one was watching. Before we continue, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the power of doing good even when no one is watching, please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us keep sharing stories that remind us of the good still left in this world. It was nearing midnight when Daniel started walking home, his shoes squelching in the puddles. He had spent the day applying for any job he could find: janitor, construction helper, driver. But each rejection hit him harder. As he turned a corner near an old park, he noticed an elderly woman sitting alone on a bench under the rain, clutching her chest. At first he thought maybe she was just resting, but when he saw her trembling and gasping for air, his instincts kicked in. He ran toward her, kneeling beside her in the freezing rain. "Ma'am, can you hear me?" he shouted, panic tightening his chest. Her lips were pale, and her hand trembled violently as she tried to reach for something in her purse. Daniel opened it for her and found a small bottle of pills, nitroglycerin. He knew enough from his late father's heart condition to recognize it. He helped her take the pill and gently rubbed her back as he called for help on his old phone, which barely had any battery left. When no ambulance answered, Daniel made a choice. He lifted her fragile body in his arms and began to run through the storm. His legs burned, his lungs screamed for air, but he didn't stop. He didn't care that his shoes were falling apart, that his own body was freezing, only that this stranger lived. By the time he reached the emergency clinic 3 blocks away, his arms were shaking and his vision blurred from exhaustion. The doctors rushed out to help, and Daniel collapsed beside the door, drenched and shaking. He waited outside the ER for hours, refusing to leave until he knew she was safe. When the nurse finally told him she'd survived, Daniel felt tears mix with the rain on his face. He asked if he could see her, but the nurse said the woman was resting and didn't want visitors. So Daniel simply nodded and left quietly, never asking her name, never expecting anything in return. That night, he went home to his tiny apartment and found Lily sleeping on the couch, hugging her stuffed bear. He covered her with his old jacket, knelt beside her and whispered, "Daddy's gonna fix everything, I promise." But deep down, he wasn't sure how much longer he could keep that promise. The next morning brought more bad news. His landlord had slipped another notice under his door. The electric company called, threatening to shut off the power. His daughter's school fees were overdue. Each problem pressed down on him like a mountain, but Daniel refused to give up. He packed his few tools and went out to look for day labor again. 2 days passed with no success. Then, on the 3rd day, as Daniel was repairing a broken fence for a neighbor for a few dollars, a sleek black car pulled up beside him. A man in a suit stepped out and asked, "Are you Daniel Moore?" Startled, Daniel nodded cautiously. The man handed him a card. "My employer would like to meet you. She says you saved her life." Daniel's heart skipped. The old woman? He hadn't expected to ever see her again. The man offered to drive him there, and though Daniel hesitated, unsure why someone so wealthy would want to see him, he agreed. The car took him to the outskirts of town. where tall iron gates opened to reveal a sprawling estate. It was the kind of place Daniel had only seen in movies: manicured gardens, marble statues, and fountains that sparkled like liquid diamonds. Inside, the air smelled faintly of roses and old books. Then he saw her, the elderly woman from the park, sitting in a wheelchair near a large window, sunlight painting her silver hair in gold. She smiled warmly when she saw him. "You must be Daniel," she said softly. "I remember your face through the rain." Daniel nodded awkwardly, unsure what to say. She extended a hand. "My name is Margaret Whitmore." The name sounded familiar. She was one of the richest women in the state, owner of a chain of successful companies. Margaret looked at him with gratitude in her eyes. "You saved my life when you had no reason to. I owe you everything." Daniel quickly shook his head. "No, ma'am." "You owe me nothing. I just did what anyone would have done." Her eyes softened. "Oh, Daniel, you'll be surprised how few people would have stopped in that rain." As they talked, Margaret learned about his life, about Lily, about his struggles, about the way he kept pushing forward despite losing everything. She listened silently, her hands folded, her eyes glistening. Before he left, Margaret said something that stayed with him. Kindness never goes unnoticed, even when it feels like the world doesn't care. A week later, Daniel received a call from a company he didn't recognize, Whitmore Enterprises. They offered him a job as a facility supervisor with full benefits, good pay, and housing included. Daniel couldn't believe it. He thought it was a mistake. But when he arrived for his first day, he found a letter waiting on his desk. For the man who gave without expecting anything in return. M.W. His eyes welled up with tears. For the first time in years, he felt hope burning bright again. Over the following months, Daniel worked harder than ever, rebuilding his life piece by piece. He moved into a modest but warm company apartment, enrolled Lily in a better school, and slowly began to smile again. Every morning he thanked the heavens, and silently thanked Margaret. Meanwhile, Margaret often asked to see him. They'd sit together over tea, talking about life, loss, and second chances. She told him about her late husband, about how loneliness had crept into her mansion like a ghost. She said Daniel's act of kindness had reminded her that compassion still existed in the world. Little by little, they formed a bond, not of wealth and gratitude, but of friendship and mutual respect. Margaret adored Lily, who would come to visit on weekends and bring her handmade drawings. In time, the old woman began calling Lily, "My little sunshine." Then one day, Margaret called Daniel to her side. Her health had begun to fade again, and she looked weaker than before. "Daniel," she whispered, "I've had everything money can buy, but I've never known true kindness until that night. You gave me more than my life. You gave me faith again." Daniel took her hand gently, tears in his eyes. "You gave me a second chance, too." She smiled faintly. "Promise me one thing, that you'll never stop believing that good deeds come back, even if it takes time." He nodded, his voice breaking. "I promise." A few days later, Margaret passed away peacefully in her sleep. Daniel and Lily attended the funeral, their hearts heavy. He thought that was the end of their chapter. Until a few weeks later, he received a letter from her lawyer. When he opened it, his hands trembled. Margaret had left him and Lily her estate, not the mansion itself, but a generous inheritance and a home of their own. Along with it was a handwritten note. "Daniel, kindness built the world I once forgot how to see. Now it's your turn to rebuild it again. Give your daughter the life you both deserve. With love, Margaret." Daniel sank to his knees, tears streaming down his face. For a man who once had nothing, this was more than a gift. It was redemption. He thought of the night he had carried her through the storm, unaware he was carrying the key to his own destiny. That evening, Daniel stood outside his new home, holding Lily's hand as she laughed and ran through the garden. He looked up at the sky, whispering, "Thank you, Margaret." The stars seemed to shimmer a little brighter, as if the universe itself had smiled. If this story touched your heart, If you believe that kindness can change lives, please like, share, and subscribe to the channel. It helps us reach more hearts with stories of hope, faith, and second chances.